we're going to start with the Ubuntu container and interactively build AutoGen Studio inside of a container. And then in a future video, we'll look at actually creating the container that's ready to go that we can just load up. So so let's look at our setup. I'm going to do this on a Kubernetes container. You could do it on a container locally. And again, you can do it in your local environment. The reason why I'm doing it on a Kubernetes container is because I use Visual Studio Code with dev containers a lot. And my local environment is just like getting stupid polluted with tons and tons of containers because I am messy. And if you're just using Docker, you can see I just got tons of containers here that is filling up my hard drive. Doing this alone doesn't inherently have a methodology for clearing these out, and you have to be organized and disciplined about it, which I'm getting better about. But one of the nice things about doing on the Kubernetes environment, I got a big cluster out there with big servers and a little more performance on those cloud class servers, right? And also, if I run it as an ephemeral thing that I want to disappear, it'll clean itself out, so I don't have to worry about which ones I'm going to clean or when, or writing some script or whatever else. Just take care of itself. But if you do it on Kubernetes, that's the hard part, right? You do these in like a lot of Docker containers. They run a web server. And if you do it locally, localhost, right? Very easy. But if you do it on a remote server, how do I connect my computer? Do I need to do kubectl port forwarding or download some other third-party OS utility? And does it work right? And there's a little, it's not the most complicated thing in the world, but it is some extra hassle. And that's one of the awesome things about these plugins. Use these plugins and it just makes it super easy. So let's look at this, right? I've already installed these plugins, but these are the two plugins you want right here. Just open your VS Code, go look for extensions, type in these words, make sure that the image looks like this one, right? We're going to Dev Containers and Kubernetes from the Microsoft repository, right? And that's part one here. The second part is really easy, is we just want to make sure that we can kubectl to our cluster. And if you may already have that set up, I'm using the VS Code that's local and to my desktop here. This is not running inside of the container. This is my regular local environment. And I've already just set it up to where I can say I'm doing my kubectl get nodes. This is already connected to my cluster. I've already got my extensions installed here, and I am ready to rock and roll. So I don't know how you normally set up your kubeconfig. I use Tanzu mission control. Makes it super easy for me to spin and always have a consistent place where I can just easily get access to my clusters. But I've already got my Tanzu CLI. I've already got that set up. And one thing I'll mention, you don't have to have Tanzu Kubernetes for this video. This will work on any Kubernetes, any standard version of Kubernetes, unless you've got something weird going on. But in future videos, we're going to take advantage of some of the unique capabilities of Tanzu. But in this one, you can use any Kubernetes that you want. So now we're all connected to our Kubernetes cluster. Let's see, what do we do next here? Next, we want to run a pod. And I'm going to run this from just a vanilla, plain old, standard Ubuntu image, right? And I'm going to give this like infinity, so it'll stay alive for me if I enter and exit the pod. And I've already got one running called dev pod, so I'm going to change mine to call it like dev pod too. But we're just going to take this command here, and we're just going to run it, and it'll load up. Where would my VS Code go here? I'll just paste this in here. And so I'm going to call this one dev pod 2. And this will just take a second here. Now I can go kubectl get pods, type of K because I have that set as an alias. And you can see I've got dev pod. I have it running, but I already disconnected from I already shut down the service I was running. We're just going to start from scratch. I'll leave that running in the background there just in case we want to access it again. We're going to start clean with this dev pod 2. Now, see what I do next. We're just going to go ahead and we're going to connect to this pod from our VS Code. So I'm going to open up again that VS Code. And this is the one running on my local desktop here. And I can click here to access that Kubernetes plugin. Now, one thing that's a little bit quirky about this is the only way I was able to find how to connect to these is by looking through each node. Like you would think, oh, maybe I could look at the namespace I want and click through, and then I'll see the pod running. Or you might think I could go, oh, workloads, and oh, look, there's pods. And then, but it doesn't show anything, even though you can see that the default namespace is selected and just both of these are running. And so this isn't perfect. I can't imagine, like I'm not super familiar with this plugin, but I can't imagine that this is supposed to be like this, but this is how it is for me. In any case, doesn't matter for our purposes. We can still get the job done. Go to nodes, right click on that. We can find the pod that you created. Oh, that's dev pod, right? I don't want dev pod anymore. I want dev pod 2. So now I gotta look through here and I gotta see, oh, where's dev pod 2 running? There's dev pod 2. So now we got dev pod 2 right here. I'm just gonna right click to it and attach Visual Studio Code. And it's gonna spin up a new VSCode window here. You see it says opening remote. It says it's starting dev container. I don't know exactly what it's doing there because this is going to connect me to the container that's running. The thing I like about this is that I don't have to care. I have too many things to think about exactly how this works. It's not important to me. I just know that it works, and I've had a good luck working with it here. I'll go ahead and I'm going to minimize now the VS Code window we were using. And now one thing I noticed is before I get into the terminal and stuff, I like having this to be able to see the local file directory in my Explorer. And when it opens up the default, this isn't here. So I just click this once. There's nothing in this other than root, right? So I'll just press OK so I can see the entire file system. I'm not going to do anything crazy with the file system. And that just resets it again. It says starting dev container again, and I can go ahead and click new terminal. And what do you know? I am now in my Kubernetes pod, and I can say ls, and there's nothing, right? It's a nice empty pod where we're just at root, and we can go ahead and just put in the code we want. And that's great, like I said, because if you want to make sure that you can replicate what I'm doing, it's great that we both start at the same exact starting place. And there are like 3 dependencies. They're not even really dependencies. Git needs to be installed. Normally, if you install Ubuntu as a virtual machine or something, it's going to have Git already installed. But if you do install the Ubuntu container, as we've done, the standard Ubuntu container is a little more minimal size because it's a container, right? Usually a container, you want things to be small. And so now we've got our container running. And right here, you can see that we've got the commands that we need right here. And the very first one, you need to put in your OpenAI key to do this right now. So in the future, I'm going to look and see how if we can do this with different LLMs. Think we should be able to, but just to get started, I did OpenAI API key. You'll need that. I've got mine. I'm going to have to drag and drop this to the other window real quick here so I can do this not on screen. Okay. Here. Enter that OpenAI API key as a variable in my terminal here. And I cleared it, so that way you guys can't see that. I'll keep that to myself, thank you. And now I can just go ahead and copy the rest of these commands. So we're just going to do apt update. We're going to install Git. We're going to install Python 3 and pip, and that's it. Then we just install AutoGen Studio. So not much to do to be able to get this going. So we'll go ahead and hit enter. Give this a second here. Okay, probably took about 2 or 3 minutes to install that stuff, but very easy, just a little cut and paste. And here's just one of the really cool things about the Kubernetes and the Dev Containers extensions. You can see that I'm running this on a Kubernetes cluster that's somewhere in California, I think. I'm in Las Vegas, and wherever my data center is, I don't really care because I can just do this. Look, it's just running like localhost 127, and they've connected it all up. So now I can let's just copy it and we'll paste it in. Yeah, that was a little interesting. It didn't open up right away, right? So I killed the process and I started again. And it's running on port 8081, as you see. But in my browser, it opened it up on port 8082. Now, that's interesting because I had already ran a different one earlier, and I killed that process. So port 8081 should be free. But my guess is, and this is really weird that this is happening because normally it should indicate something in a terminal. My guess is because I was running another container on 8081, maybe something got stuck with that process, and somehow now it is using 8082. But I don't. It is very peculiar to me that it would say 8081 in my container like this. And I didn't see any indication of any type of mention of 8082 at all. But it's working. So hey, working, right? And to zoom in on this because it's a small, big screen here. Okay. Now we've got this working, right? And we can just start asking questions. Let's just see. Can you show me a picture of 4 T-Rexes playing volleyball? Now, let's point out a couple things about this this environment here. So we've got our workflow section over here. So you got a little pull down menu. I've got a visualization agent workflow, a general agent workflow. Of course, we can make a lot more workflows. These are the two that it comes with out of the box. And this is, of course, at the time of recording. This project's under active development. So if you watch this video 6 months from now, it's probably going to be at least a little different. So this is how it is at the time of recording, and it'll grow from here. The default is visualization agent workflow. So I don't know what that is. As I boot this up, but it certainly sounds like it can make an image for me. Now I've got sessions. This one, you can see I could create new ones. It's a lot like that ChatGPT, again, how I can have multiple different conversations. Conversations themselves have the ID instead of a name. Doesn't really matter to me. My bet is it's probably something this is a rapidly growing project. They'll probably, unless they want it this way, may change that in the future. And then I've got my little chat window here. I can type in questions and I can get answers. So let's go ahead and see what happens. So I want to see the picture of 4 T-Rexes playing volleyball. And we have here this indicator. That time it actually worked quickly. In the blog, you might see different error messages, and doesn't really matter because I was expecting an error message because there is actually one minor configuration change we need to make to get this to work. There's some cool things about seeing how this works, and this will give us a nice little way to get familiar with the tool. We can see here, sorry, I cannot create or show images. Another thing, now you may have noticed that one actually went pretty quickly, but while it was working, the only thing you saw is that little busyness indicator, which is nice, doing something. You can tell, hey, doing something, probably, hopefully not frozen because it's still moving. But some of these prompts can take a while, depending on the complexity of the thing that you're trying to ask it to do. Yesterday, I ran a couple examples. One was just like this. Another one, it took longer. It struggled more while I was trying to find the answer. Of course, didn't get it because in either case, I wasn't expecting it to, because I knew there was configuration that was needed. Now I can see that it doesn't show you any of the messages while it's working. And if it gets frozen, if it gets stuck, if it's doing something long and complicated, you won't see anything here until your query is complete. And that's one of the other cool things about, actually, I'll just, instead of shrinking that window down, let's just pull up the same VSCode window we were just in and check it out. We can see, here's the question. Now we can see so we can see our agents. When we ask the query, it's not just, it's already working with multiple agents because we have a user proxy. The user proxy agent, which is our proxy, it speaks to the visualization assistant based on the workflow that's selected, and it asks the visualization assistant to provide this. Now, visualization assistant responds back to the user proxy. Now, this is only 2 messages. Depending on what you ask it and what it needs to do, there could be 10 or 20 messages that are in this flow. And you can watch that. And these will just scroll by in real time in this terminal here. And so if you're doing something and it's not progressing in your GUI the way you want it to, and you want to come and see what's happening behind the scenes, then you can come here and see. Now, once the question is queried, you can see, even if there's 2 messages or 10 messages or 30 messages, it's going to show here this my question, and it's going to show the main response in the main body of the window. And there's this expandable section. If I want to drill in and actually see any number of different messages that it needed to come up with its final output, I can just expand this here rather than going into the terminal, and it'll show me as many messages as there were to be able to come up with this outcome. Okay, so what's wrong? So let's dig in and find out. So let's go over and go to this build tab, and we can see on this build tab, we've got a few different things: skills, agents, and workflows. And I'm not going to go through all of those right now. I'm going to have several more videos and blogs about the AutoGen framework. We'll go through all these in depth, but just for the quick overview to give us enough to get started with, I'm just going to click here on this skills. And it took a second to load up. And we can see here that there's a skill for generating images. There's a couple skills that come out of the box. There's lots and lots of skills that you can go and find online that people are sharing. I still have to dig in a little more to find if these are compatible with things like Gorilla Open Functions or other types of Marvin project or other AI functions that other projects use. But either case, it's a very similar type of idea to any other implementation where you're giving the ability to have the LLM to execute some function to be able to do something for you. So we can see here, do have something that says generate images, and we're trying to generate image, that might seem relevant, but that's just a skill. How would we put that skill to work? And that's where we're going to come into our workflows tab. And we saw earlier that our user proxy was talking to this visualization agent workflow. And also the visualization agent workflow is the one that was selected on our playground tab. And so let's take a look in here. Maybe this will give us some hint as to what's wrong, right? And we can see in this, and this is one of the limitations I was reading about the GUI specifically right now, is that workflows as of today are limited to this sender, receiver, two agent paradigm in the GUI, right? Now, if you use AutoGen framework, you can go much further than that in establishing communication between any number of different agents. And my understanding is that in soon in future versions of the GUI, they're hopefully going to expand beyond this limitation. That is one limitation of the GUI today. And you can go see there's a variety of different things. Do you want this? How many times do you want to sit there and think amongst itself before it gives up? How many times do you want to come back, and do you want it to come back when it's thinking and it thinks it should do some other thing in order to complete your quest? Do you want to come back and ask you if it wants to or not, and just let it try on its own? These are all different things. Of course, the system messages, these are messages that you give related to this workflow, and those combined with the messages, the instructions that the agent has. And we can see here this workflow has a spot to add skills, and there aren't any. Right. So it makes sense if we have a skill that says generate images, and we have a workflow that's clearly for generating images, that those two should probably be connected, right? And I imagine at some point in the future, they'll probably, since the visualization agent and the generate images skills, they're both here out of the box. Imagine these would be wired out of the box, maybe as just an oversight. But anyways, at this point in time, they aren't. But I can just add skill, and I can see the generate images skills, click add, click OK, and then let that save. Okay, workflow created successfully. Now we can go back to the playground. And I could enter it again in this window, but just to also show a little bit how sessions work and keep things clean, I'm just going to go ahead and open a new session. And we'll do this again in now we have a brand new clean session. We'll type in, let's see if we can see our 4 T-Rexes playing volleyball, and I'll hit enter here. And we'll give this probably 20, 30 seconds here and see what happens. And while this is going here too, we can see that what's happening in real time if we go over to our terminal, and you can see that execution succeeded. So let's see what we see here. Right, here's my question. And even though it hasn't shown us a response in our GUI yet, right, we can see behind the scenes our visualization system saying, sure, yeah, I'll make this. Sure, I can do this for you. Comes up with some Python function here. After running this code, you should see the images saved. So this is all happening behind the scenes. And then finally, it looks like now we should probably see it if I go back over here to our window. Boom, there we are. We have it's interesting, I asked for 4 T-Rexes playing volleyball. We got 5, bonus. And it's interesting how it extended the net, so you'd have a normal net here, and then there's another one kind of coming behind them. So it is interesting things of Dolly. But nonetheless, we got our image, and we can continue to ask questions. We can use other workflows. We can make new skills. So now I think everything you need to start, right? To get started, I'm going to have other posts in the near future digging into both the AutoGen framework and probably AutoGen Studio more to some extent, and I'll share those as I go. But now you can go and start getting your hands dirty, start playing, and start actually giving some more advanced instructions than you can normally do when you're talking to your chatbot to get it to do more for you. You can give it skills and tell it to, hey, go make an API call and do my job for me, so that way I can sit here and drink some water, some coffee. And now, in my case, I want it to be able to do more. This is a year I'm going to try to accomplish a whole lot of stuff. For whatever reason that you want for this, now you have a new tool to go ahead and start playing with it. Thank you for dialing in today. I hope that you have a lot of fun and a lot of success in whatever your goals are in getting AI to do more and more stuff for you. And Happy New Year. Talk to you the next video. Thanks for joining.